That's a dream out of the opening. The queen is lost, so is the game. Always the key to success in the opening, c5, game over. That is how you just win the game completely in 10 moves. Hi guys, and welcome to Journey the Grandmaster, the place where you can improve every aspect of your chess game. If you are having some headache playing the openings sometimes, you are not alone. We all have been there. But today, I want to make your life simpler and show you a very simple to learn yet very solid and tough to fight against opening for white, so you can crush everyone below 1000 and even above that. So, first of all, you have to decide what would be the first move for you. e4 and d4 are the main lines, and I would definitely recommend you to play d4. If you play e4, that's a very strong move, obviously, but the problem is you have to know so much theory here, depending on how your opponent is gonna move. If he plays e5, you need to know something here, you need to build your opening here. If he plays c5, that's a completely different world, and you also need to be prepared to play here. But what about knight f6, immediately attacking your pawn? Well, you have to deal with it. If you just play d4, you're going to be a pawn down, and you are going to find yourself in a very bad position. What happens after d5, the Scandinavian defense? You have to know that as well. And so e6, c6, there are so many different openings to learn, and the main problem is it's almost impossible to play the same thing against everything because it's so different there. But if you play d4, you have a few very good setups which you can master and then play no matter what your opponent is playing. So d4 is definitely what I'm going to recommend you. And now, among beginners, the main move is d5. It's also a very reasonable move, trying to fight for the center here. And I'm going to recommend you the move knight f3, just developing your pieces. It's always the key to success in the opening. And now, the main move among beginners is knight to c6, which is reasonable. I mean, they also play it on a top level, but you have to know how to play it. And what happens among beginners is oftentimes that people are not understanding what to do with it. They have problems with, because normally I would recommend you, if you're playing black and you're playing d5, always to start with c5 and then place your knight on c6 if you want that, or just place your knight on d7 and forget about any problems. But what happens after knight c6 is that you don't really have enough space for all of your pieces. Somehow the queen can go anywhere, and you're not really fighting for the center here because you haven't played the move c5, and well, it's going to be very difficult now. But so many beginner players are playing it, and you can punish it if you're playing as white. So what I recommend here is e3, which is also the main line. You are continuing your development, you're opening up your bishop, and this bishop, don't be worried about it that it's close now, because our idea is to place it on b2 where it's going to be very strong. So now there are a few main moves among beginners here, knight f6 and bishop g4. Knight f6 is the main one, so let's start with it. I'm going to recommend you to play knight d2 here because that's the most flexible move. So our main idea in the whole opening is to place this bishop on d3 and then make castles. But we don't know yet whether this bishop is going to go to g4 or black will just play e6 and leave it there. So from that, it depends whether we place our bishop on d3 or on b5. Because if they play e6, it doesn't make that much sense to play bishop b5. Because simply bishop d7, and then this bishop is kind of useless here. There is no pin, and black is going to play a6, and we don't want to just exchange our bishop for a knight. So we play knight d2 first, and now we see what happens. If they play bishop g4, then bishop e5 might be a very dangerous idea, potentially just winning the whole game. If they play e6, we are just gonna place the bishop on d3, where it's gonna be very strong. So knight d2 is a developing move, very useful for us, but it gives us time to see what our opponent does. Now, the main move for black among beginners is bishop g4, and the idea is clear. Black wants to pin the knight so that e5 move is possible now. And we don't really want to allow that because it's gonna give black a lot of initiative in the center. And remember, the center is almost always the most important thing in the opening. So what happens when black plays bishop g4? Almost always we play h3 immediately. There is practically no drawback to this move because we are attacking this bishop and we are asking the question where does it go? If you exchange the knight on f3, which is the main line among beginners here, well, we are just happy because now this knight is there on f3. Remember, I said that knight d2 is a very useful move. Here you see why, because now we still have the knight on f3, but we have a pair of bishops, which is just great, especially in the opening, and here there is a lot of potential. For example, the main move is e6 here among beginners, and we can immediately attack our opponent and play bishop b5. And remember what I told you about this knight c6 move without the move c5. It's so difficult to defend this knight now. The rook can go to c8 as it's not going to help to defend, and otherwise we just want to play knight e5 and attack it twice. Like if you play bishop e7, for example, we just go on and, well, good luck trying to defend it. And if you just castle, then we just win the pawn and basically the game is almost over. The main move here for black, there are two main moves after bishop b5, queen d7 and bishop b4. And both of those moves are basically completely losing the game. So let's start with bishop b4. It's a check now, but there is a very easy and very active way to deal with it, c3, and we are attacking this bishop, and what is even more important, we are opening up some squares for our queen where it's going to be very dangerous, especially this square on a4. So the main move is bishop a5, and basically now the game is over. It's almost +5 for white, and all we need to do is just go on and crush our opponent. So we can play knight a5 and attack here. The main move, well, there are two main moves, queen d6 and castles. If they play castles, we can just take, basically with both of the pieces, we can take with a bishop or with a knight. Taking with a bishop is great because once they take back, we have this fork here, and basically we are winning the bishop and the game. That's a whole extra piece, that's a dream out of the opening. So that's losing, and if they play queen d6, then we can play queen a4, adding another attacker, developing another pin, and notice that this bishop is just another problem for black because now it's basically hanging thanks to the spin. So if you castle, we can just take it and then capture the bishop for free, and once again the position is completely winning for white. So that is how you just win the game completely in 10 moves, and yeah, that's just perfect for us. So that's bishop to d6, and another move is queen to d7, which seems like it helps because it's defending the knight, but still that is a horrible pin now with a knight, and we can use it immediately with the move knight to e5. That's a double attack. We are attacking not only the queen, but also the knight. Now the main move is queen d6, basically the only move, because if you go somewhere else, then we just take the knight, and yeah, once again, there are not enough defenders. So queen d6. But we are playing c4 now, once again opening up this queen, and this pawn is now very active, threatening c5, and a6 is a main line for black here, but then we just win the game immediately after c5. It's move number 10, but the game is completely over because there is no way for black to defend this knight. The queen has to go somewhere, and now we can take either with a bishop or with a knight. Both moves are completely winning. For example, bishop takes, pawn takes, knight takes, c6, queen goes somewhere, and we go back. We are pawn up, and this queen is still under attack. We have the initiative, everything is perfect. Even better would be to take it with a knight, because the queen is hanging, and if you take bishop takes, now there is a fork here, and we are winning the rook. And if black plays queen d7, which is a little bit tricky, because now the knight is hanging and the bishop is hanging. But we have just knight e5 back. The queen has to take, otherwise the game is lost immediately. And now we are just trapping this queen altogether, because if you notice, it doesn't really have a lot of squares to go. So we are just attacking it with the move a4. And the queen goes either to b4 or a5, doesn't really matter. The queen b4 is a little bit more active because it keeps an eye on this pawn on b2. But we play bishop to d2, and the queen is totally trapped. Like, the only possible move is queen takes b2. But now we can just bring our knight back, knight d3, and the queen is lost, so is the game. So here you can see we are winning immediately after move 15. So let's go back here. You can see that here, if black takes bishop f3, which is the main line, and then plays e6, which is the main line, we just play bishop b5, and already it's so difficult to fight against this idea. So here, after h3, instead of bishop takes f3, they could also play bishop h5. But they still play bishop b5, because if you notice, the bishop is no longer controlling this diagonal, so it can go to d7 back and yeah, deal with this problem. So we play bishop b5, the main line is e6, and now we want to jump knight to e5. But of course we can do that because of the pin, so what do? We get rid of the pin with the move g4. And of course you can sacrifice a knight, but that would be a completely winning position here. We can just put our bishop back to deal with the pin, then the knight can still jump. I mean, that's just an extra piece without no real compensation. So g4, bishop goes to g6 in pretty much every game here, and now we jump once again with a knight. Knight e5, attacking this knight for the second time, and well, that's a fantastic position out of the opening. The main move among beginners here is queen to d6, but remember what we do once again, we want to connect new pieces into the game, so we play the move c4. And the idea is, once again, we are threatening c5, which would be winning, for example, a6, c5, game over. It's move number 10, I mean, that's just crushing. And if you take, then it's very important not to blunder here, because knight d takes c4 seems to be very tempting, but the problem is, after queen b4, we are just losing our bishop. So, in order to avoid that, we need to take it first, and then we are destroying our opponent's pawn structure altogether, and now we can just take it with a tempo. We are attacking the queen, queen goes to d5 in most of the cases, and then just f3. Of course, we don't want to blunder our rook. And as afterwards, we are always ready to play e4, maybe after castles. So, for example, I don't know, you can play bishop b4, check, but then it's not a problem at all. We can just exchange it. Let's say those are going off the board, black makes castles, but basically positionally this position is already completely lost, even though the material is equal. So what do? We just castle, then we just put our rooks on the c file and just win everything here. For example, rook a to d8, we just play e4 immediately, this queen is in trouble. Notice that it almost has no moves to go, and if you go to b5, which is the only possible square, we just continue with a4, this queen has to go away, and basically we can already go into the endgame with queen a5, because, like I said, the pawn structure is so horrible and it's so simple to play as white. And look at those pieces, both of them are doing completely nothing here for black. So that is another dream position we would like to get into. And yeah, so here we don't have any troubles. So whenever you see this bishop on g4, you just play h3, and then either they take, then you take it back and try to use the fact that this knight on c6 is vulnerable. If your opponent plays a6, spending a full tempo trying to stop it, no problem. You still have two bishops, your position is much more active, so the rule how to use those bishops advantage is to open up the position, because if you open it up, the bishops are tremendously strong. So what you do, you play the move c4 and just try to open it up. Here you want to stop this move bishop b4, because why would you need to deal with this check? You can just play a3, the bishop will go somewhere like d6, and yeah, you can just continue your development, you can castle. Whenever black takes, now you have two pawns in the center against only one, so it's always great for you. If they don't exchange, if they just castle, then you just continue the development. Castles, queen c2, b4, c5, bishop b2, knight f5, you can do whatever you want. That's just a perfect position for you after the opening. So now let's consider another option. If black plays here knight f6 and does go the right way without this move knight to c6. Well, the good thing about this opening, we still do the same thing no matter what. We play the move e3 and now c5. That is much more fighting, that is creating some difficulties in terms of the development. Now, they can play c5 immediately, they can play e6 first, doesn't really matter. So let's say e6 here, bishop d3, and now c5. So our idea, remember I said that this bishop should go to b2 because it's a very, very powerful piece here. So we play b3, knight c6, bishop to b2, bishop a7, just castles, and our main idea is to put this knight on a5. So we play knight d2 first. Remember that it's always great to develop as many pieces as possible. Now we have developed all of the minor pieces and our position is very active. The main move here is b6 among beginners, and now we can already jump in with knight e5 with a tempo because we are attacking the knight now. It's almost never a good idea for black to take, because here this knight is going to be very passive. We could continue with f4, and then the queen is coming, the rook is coming, and we are just basically given a checkmate. If black defends with bishop b7, then we still play f4. And now, surprisingly, for me at least, the main line among beginners is to take it here. And then we take, and once again, we have a beautiful position here. Black plays knight d7, the main move, which is already a mistake probably. And now we are just start giving some threats. Queen g4, rook is coming here, the second rook is coming. The plan is so clear, the moves are basically automatic, so you need to bring all of your pieces to the king side and checkmate your opponent. And for black, it's so difficult to create some counterplay. I mean, no matter what you do, seems like you're just making your position even worse and create some weaknesses. Like if you play f5, then this e6 pawn would be horribly weak, and that would make the life only more difficult for black. In many cases, black takes here after f4 and d4, and then take on e5, still the same thing. Then goes to d7, queen h5, throw all of your pieces to the king side, and it would be almost impossible for your opponent to deal with all of the threats and stop the checkmate. Now, in this video, I show you the only opening for black you need to know to forget about all of the opening problems forever.